The World Health Organization says the coronavirus outbreak is now officially a pandemic.
Coronavirus epidemic rages in China. Life in much of the country has slowed to a crawl.
There are now more new global infections of coronavirus outside mainland China than inside where it originated, and the world is scrambling to contain it.
All of Italy, the entire country, a nation of 60 million people on lockdown to contain the coronavirus.
I want to commend the CDC for acknowledging the reality and saying very clearly that it's not a question of if, but when the coronavirus affects the United States in a much more profound manner. As of this hour, there are no confirmed cases of coronavirus in the city of New York. Every single potential case that was tested came back negative, and that is a very good thing.
I'm Elaine Nutter-Diaz. I'm from Manhattan, from the tippity top. I'm from Inwood.
I'm Becca. I'm from Forest Hills, Queens, which is where Spider-Man is from, and it's my favorite thing to say about my neighborhood ever.
My name's Max Ringgold, and I'm from Brooklyn.
My name is Caleb. I'm from uptown Manhattan in Harlem, like right above Central Park.
My name is Faith Duggan. I use she, her pronouns, and I am from 1787 Madison Avenue, New York, which is just the Manhattan of New York City.
We have now been testing around the clock, as you know. We are aggressively testing, following up leads, because we want to find as many people who test positive so we can get them out of circulation. We have 21 new cases that we found, so we're a total of 76 in the state of New York right now.
Well, I got COVID like 2 months ago, but no one in my family or friends from the city had COVID really.
I know a couple of people. I know myself, I know my sister, I know my mom and my dad.
Well, one person that we know that got COVID was my dad's best friend and our closest family friend, who was older, and because he was older, he just stayed inside for the entire year and did not go out once. And he had like an aide because he was older and had like some issues, and that was the only person that he saw. The aide got COVID and gave it to him, and then he passed away because of COVID.
My dad got COVID. He passed away from COVID.
We're in a state of high vigilance, high readiness, all elements of the city government to address this crisis.
Well, there were a few distinct phases of it. So we got sent home from school in early March, and spent about a week there, trying to quarantine and adjust to things and figuring out how to wear masks everywhere you go and carrying hand sanitizer and before you touched anything and stuff like that, and sterilizing groceries we brought back into the house. And then I woke up one day and my dad had a fever. And so we all went, okay, we went into action mode. And so he decided he was going to be staying in my parents' room, and I'd be staying in my room, and my mom was going to sleep on the couch in the living room. And that was, it was still scary, but it was all right for a while. And we were still, this was the beginning of Zoom classes, and it was the middle of final season, so I was trying to manage all that kind of stuff too. And my mom was taking care of my dad. A few weeks into that, maybe about a month into that, my dad had to go to the hospital. At that point, my mom had started getting sick too. And so it went from, you know, my parents' room was like the quarantine zone and the rest of the house was ours, to the sick people were all over the rest of the house and I was stuck in my room basically.
My day-to-day life changed in every single way. I did not go outside at all. My dad was the only one that went out to get groceries, and that was it. I live on the ground floor of an apartment building, and we have a courtyard, and we were too scared to just sit out in the courtyard. So that was definitely a big change. There's a park right across the street, and sometimes my dad would want to take little walks, but my mom would get very upset by that. So that only happened a few times, but we were all just inside, just all day. And for me personally, that changed my sleep schedule, my eating schedule. I'd go to bed at like 5 in the morning, wake up at 1, have breakfast at 3, and that's just the way I lived for several months.
I used to leave the house most days, and in COVID, I didn't leave the house for the month of March and April. I just quarantined out. I'm like, nope, you can get the groceries, parents. I'm sitting my ass here.
I guess my day-to-day life during COVID didn't really change that much. I mean, I guess I didn't see any of my friends during like 2020 summer when it was like really hitting hard. I guess most of the stores were still open. You had to wear masks and stuff like that. Nothing really closed in the city near me, but you had to like wait outside for going to grocery stores. I mean, I guess big venues were closed. They took the rims off the basketball courts for like a couple months. But besides that, nothing else was too bad. I guess one of my friends, he rented out a house upstate for, I guess, almost all of quarantine. So I went up there for a bit. I mean, it was like really secluded, so you didn't have to really wear a mask or isolate. There was no one else for like miles and miles away. So I guess that was fun. It was good to get out of the city and just experience not living with COVID for a couple weeks during quarantine. I guess you always see in the news just how there's like no hospital beds left, but to be honest, I mean, I didn't know anyone in the city that got COVID, so I just felt sort of removed from that aspect of it. I guess that sounds just almost a little bit selfish, but I guess it's easier to sort of like check yourself out when you're not that close to anyone that got sick.
In the intensive care unit, the second patient who came in, it was tested positive, was a 27-year-old. I'm 29 right now. I'm just as healthy as this patient.
Obviously, I was in my freshman year when COVID hit and school shut down. And so that pretty drastically changed the second half of my freshman year of college. And then we were sent home, and then instead of 2 people and 2 cats being in a New York City apartment, there were suddenly 3 people and 2 cats in a New York City apartment. So it was hard for all 3 of us because my parents were still working and I was still doing classwork, and it was still kind of crazy. And then my dad got sick, and then that drastically changed everything too.
What was it like having COVID in the city?
I'll be honest, I probably blocked out most of that time because it's one of those things you're just seeing people die on television. So I was just like, it's not COVID, I just have a cold. I get sick really easily. So we were all very like, it's not COVID, and we were telling ourselves that just to make it through that time. However, my mom started getting sicker, not like deathly sick, but just like this is more than a normal cold sick, and then that's when we all had to like start like realizing, okay, this might not just be a cold anymore.
So they had shortages in the city, and certain types of medicine were unavailable, so I had to go around to a lot of different places to pick up the things that I needed to keep her fever down, because they only had babies, Tylenol, babies, aspirin type stuff, and you're only allowed to buy 1 box of it, which basically would last her like 6 hours because you had to take a high enough dose to keep her fever down. That kind of thing was pretty stressful, and going outside was strange. Everything was completely deserted. Stores were boarded up and stuff like that. That, while finishing school and trying to keep myself healthy at the same time, was pretty stressful.
What was it like when your dad got sent to the hospital?
We knew he was going to a good hospital because they took him and they said, where you want to go? We'll take you to a Methodist. And he's like, no, I'm not going to Methodist. take me to NYU or something. I forget where he was. He went to the emergency room first, but we knew it was okay. This was back when, you know, in the city, people were picking up corpses in flatbed trucks and carrying them away and stuff like that. And the hospitals were real, like, charnel houses, but we knew it was going to a place that would be all right. I kind of was just focusing on taking care of my mom because she'd gotten really sick and had underlying conditions. So I was, you know, doing finals and trying to clean up to keep myself healthy and also trying to take care of her.
So when my dad got sick, initially I didn't really tell anybody at school. I just kind of like shot my professors an email like, hey, my shit is gonna be late and this is why. I was still trying to process my dad getting sick at all. And also like, okay, I'm still in my freshman year of college. How am I adjusting everything to that? And then, like I said, my mom woke me up one morning. She was like, hey, Dad woke up with a fever. We're gonna move you out of your room. We're gonna move him in here. You are not to talk to, like you're not to be in the same area as him. So basically, like my dad got sick and I wasn't allowed to interact with him. And so very much everything changed very quickly. So like one day he woke up with a fever, and then a week later he was being sent to the hospital, and then 3 days after that we were getting the worst news of our life ever.
My day-to-day life definitely changed. It's more normal now. Like before COVID, I wake up at like reasonable hours. I go out and take the train now, and I started taking the train I think last spring or last winter, I'm not sure, but it was like a while. And I'm still kind of nervous about taking the train because there are always one or two people who don't wear masks. But I do go out. I go to restaurants sometimes. I go to museums, but I'm always masked for the most part. If I'm indoors, I'm masked.
I'm very diligent about wearing a mask. I don't want to get other people sick if I have a cold. I don't want to get other people sick if I am asymptomatic with COVID. I am very diligent about washing my hands, cleaning groceries. I just want to protect myself and others as much as possible.
Going back home, it doesn't really feel like home, you know, because like it's an apartment, so it's not like I can go up a floor and be like, oh, like this is my own space. But especially since my dad was in my room for a chunk of time, but so like a lot of things aren't specifically where they were. And so like even acknowledging that things are like an inch off is like, oh, well, Dad was here and then he died. My room is connected to the living room, so there's like pictures of my dad from like when he was little, pictures from when I was little and they were younger, like all over the walls. So it's far more difficult to be like, oh, I'm going home, because home is 3 people, not 2.
There's you know, signs everywhere of how it changed things, you know, not even in like negative health related ways, just you know, you walk down any big street and there's tons of outdoor dining setups, stuff like that. They're all over the city now, and people like them, so they're probably going to stay. Even if it's a good change, or if people like it, or if it has nothing to do with COVID specifically, it's going to be a reminder to people who, you know, were there before and after that what happened.
I want to thank New Yorkers. New Yorkers heard the instructions that were offered by our public health officials, and they acted on them. And our focus right now is on addressing this crisis and ending it, but when the story is told later, New Yorkers will prove that they once again showed strength and resiliency by following through and doing exactly what they needed to do to protect themselves and their families and their neighbors. New Yorkers, I have often said, do not scare easily, do not get intimidated, do not panic. We've been up against many, many things. We've been up against global health crises, terror attacks. We've been up against any number of crises. New Yorkers are very, very consistent. They're tough, resolute, they help each other. They know how to deal with pretty much anything.